Hello and welcome to the vlog, and this is the second of my cosy fireside chats talking about the cost of buying, owning and living aboard a narrowboat. In the last vlog I talked about the process of buying a used narrowboat. In this one I'm talking about the actual hard cost in cash terms. If you want to go to someone's desk, slap down a wad of cash and say, "I'll have that one," that's what this video is about. And then the costs of owning a boat and living aboard a boat I will touch on in the next couple of vlogs to come. I've got some props here. These are cuttings from the paper which I will show you close-ups of as I get round to doing them. The trouble with saying how much does a narrowboat cost is that there are just a vast array of variables and factors that will define. It's like saying, what does a car cost? Well, that depends. If you want to buy a clapped out 1979, I don't know, Vauxhall Vectra or something, it's going to cost you a lot less than a brand new Bentley Mulsanne Turbo Cabriolet, this, that and the other. And it's the same with boats. There are variables such as, well, how old is the boat? How long is the boat? Who made the shell? That is the actual steelwork of the hull. Who did the fit out? Generally speaking, a well-known fit-out builder will command more of a premium than someone who did it themselves, because you never quite know what you're getting with someone who fitted out themselves. There are variances in what people think of the shell builders. So I'm not going to name any specific names, but if you look on the forums again, you'll see that some shell builders are highly regarded and others perhaps less so. So how long it is, what the general condition of the boat is, what facilities has it got on board. You might want one with central heating and there's a boat that's only got a stove. Maybe you don't want a stove. So many different things affect the price, and above all, it will come down to personal preference. You can walk on a boat and say, this is absolutely vile, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, let alone pay the asking price. The next person who comes along may step on board and absolutely love it and would pay over the odds to secure that boat. So it's a funny old thing, the boat market. It's what someone is willing to pay and how desperate someone is to sell. That said, I'm going to give you some general guides as to what you might get for your money, and for the purposes of this I'm going to divide the things up into 10 grand bands. These are entirely arbitrary. I'm making them up, I'm describing it like this, and let me say from the outset that there will always be an exception to the rule. If I'm going to say, as I am, that anything under 10 grand is a real wreck of a project boat, there's always going to be someone who says, oh, well, I bought my mint 2015 boat for 50p off eBay. So take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. It's very much a general guide. So let's start into those bands then, and I'm going to start with less than £10,000. If you have less than £10,000 to spend on a narrowboat, it's actually not going to be enough. You might be able to buy a boat, but it is seriously going to be in need of work. For less than 10 grand, you are looking at an old boat, one whose hull is almost certainly going to need a load of welding. The interior is going to need ripping out and refitting. It's a boat you are buying because you actually will enjoy the process of having a project, because you're easily going to spend double, triple the amount you spent on the boat in refitting it, in which case, of course, you could well have just gone out and bought a better boat to start with. So if you're looking under 10 grand, realistically, unless you do manage to find some outstanding bargain where someone's desperate to sell something in pristine condition, you're looking at a very much project boat, which you're going to spend a lot of time and effort doing up. In fact, so limited is the selection under 10 grand, I've only managed to find one in the adverts. This is a 23-foot long, not long at all, it's a Springer cruiser narrowboat from 1989 with 3 berths. Requires some replating, they say, and that's being advertised at £5,950. I should also mention, by the way, I've taken these ads from the last couple of months' worth of Canal newspapers, so the ads are probably slightly out of date, especially given print lead times. The boats may well have sold, so I can't promise that any of these are available. They are just to give you an example. But Springers, there's probably a whole vlog to be made about Springers. You either love them or you hate them. They are Marmite boats. There are a couple moored where I am and the people love them. But they can need work, particularly when they're this old. So there you go, for 6 grand you need one that needs replating, and our warrant needs some work inside as well. So that's very much the bargain basement level. 10 to 20 grand, well, you probably are, I'm afraid, still looking at pretty much a project boat. It'll be an older boat, might be a shorter boat, could be a long one. It's probably going to need very careful attention to the metalwork, and inside you are going to need to update it substantially. The simple truth is you don't get a lot of boat for 10 to 20 grand. You can get one that won't sink, but it's going to need a fair bit of TLC. Let's have a look at another couple of ads here. A 28-foot narrowboat from, when is it? I don't think it gives a date on that one. This is £11,500. It's got a BMC, Leyland BMC 1.5 litre engine. Project, they say, for refurbishment. Partly refurbed, needs finishing off. It has got a new steel bottom with 10mm plate fitted, and the sides have been replated. So they say most major interior work done, but finishing required. So that's 11.5 grand. So again, very much a project boat. There's a 30-foot trad here from 1991. Beta diesel engine being installed, 14.5 grand. And then I think this is the final one in this price band, £15,000 for a 27-foot. You see how short all these ones are at this price range. 27-foot, 1998, and it's got a safety certificate to June 2020, so you could get on the water with that. £15,000. Let's step up a notch. Now you're talking more sensible kind of money for a boat that almost certainly you're going to want to refit in some way, add bits to, update and modify. But 20 to 30 grand should get you a solid, non-sinking boat. The engine may have high hours on it. There'll need to be some painting, still some TLC to be doing on it, but you're not talking about an absolute basket case of a project like you might have been with less money. So 20 to 30 grand, get you a solid enough older boat. You're probably still going to want to spend some money on it to bring it up to whatever spec you want. Again, looking at the ads here, we've got a 60-foot 1996 boat. It's got a BMC 1.8 PRM gearbox, a little generator, that's nice, an inverter, partial wiring it says, so obviously there is still some project work to be done on that. And what does it say? How much is that one going for? £25,000. That's a private ad, not through a broker. Equally in this price range, a 40-foot 1994 boat for £25,000, fitted out by the previous owner, it says, over a 6-year period, a labour of love. Does it say it's got any work still to do on it? It's got BSS till 2020 again. Yeah, sounds quite nice. It says it's well finished. That's being sold off by CalCut Boats. 40-footer, 25 grand. So that's probably one to go and have a look at if it hasn't already been sold, if that is your budget. And then here at $29,999, just within this banding, a 1989 boat, 60-foot long. Does it need any work? It's got a Perkins water-cooled engine. I'm not a massive fan of the water-cooled because you're dragging in water from the canal, then you have to put it through several sieves to stop all the yuck of the canal clogging everything up. Might be better swapping that for a keel-cooled, which is what the more modern ones do. But yeah, the spec sounds all right. It says external paintwork okay, safety certificate just carried out, requires some internal cosmetic updating, and that's 30 grand. Right, let's get serious. 30 to 40 grand. You're talking about some decent boats at the 30 to 40 grand spend. Yes, you'll probably want to fiddle about with the paintwork and put some new interior in or something, but equally for 30 to 40 grand you can expect to get a decent, solid, get straight onto it, get straight out on the canals narrowboat that really shouldn't have any issues. I'm not saying there won't, because you can always buy a lemon at any price range, but for 30 to 40 grand you can definitely expect to get a nice boat. What have I got here? 32 grand 57-foot trad by Mike Haywood, who I think is quite well respected in the shell building. This is from 1985. It has a Russell Newbury engine. This is one of those classic engines that people either love a classic or they really don't want anything to do with them. And it's got a BSC to June next year. Boat undergoing refit, it says. There's still some work to do on that one. Another 32 grand boat here, a 1997 62-foot, again with a classic engine on it, a Perkins 3HD42. I know nothing about the Perkins engines, but it says it's a spacious boat with lots of features and a little TLC, it says, is needed. So again, you're still looking at some work for 32 grand. And the final one I've got, I think, in this price range, 36 grand. They're asking for a 1988 48-foot trad stern boat. What does it say about work on it? It sounds like it's quite nicely specced out. And blacked in 2014. That's the painting on the sides to stop the boat rusting. And BSS to November 2019. Yeah, that sounds quite decent. That's being sold by AB&B, which is the broker I bought mine from. So that's what you get for 30 to 40 grand. Let's go up the next level. This is where my boat was pitched. It was advertised at just under 50 grand. I haggled the price down a bit initially, and then I had the survey and I haggled the price down a bit more. So my boat, to give you some frame of reference, was between 40 and 50. I have, of course, since spent about somewhere between 8 and 10 grand on it. So that's about another 25 to 30% on it. In, what did I do? I had some work on the engine. I had the new electrics, the new dinette. I've had the new seats in here. What was the other major expense I had? Oh, solar panels, of course. So the various bits of work all added up to about 8, 9 grand, I think, on mine. But mine cost between 40 and 50 grand. You're getting a decent boat at this sort of price. It won't be brand new. You know, it'll be a few years old. Mine dates from 2000, but it should be in good nick. And if you've bought wisely and sensibly, you should be getting a good boat that shouldn't need a lot doing to it unless you so choose. For 41 grand here, a 57-foot trad from 2005. You see, we're getting newer here, and it's got an Isuzu engine there, I believe fairly reliable. Blacked every 3 years, it says. Engine service regularly. Probably quite a decent buy. That's 41 grand. For 45 grand, you've got another 57-foot trad here from 2005 again. Vitus engine, fairly well regarded, I think, and repainted in 2009, so that should look quite decent. Ideal liveaboard, they say. You can see how, as we've stepped up the money, you're definitely getting less project work and more something you can start using straight away. I think that's all I've got in that category. Now, above 50 grand, you really are talking pretty decent boats, and you can start to go, the sky's the limit at this point, 50, 60, 70. I've even seen a new boat sold at 50 grand. This was by Calcut Boats, and they were brand new for about 50 grand. For that, you had no choice in how it looked. They built them to a template, a pattern. You could select options, which would bump the price up, but the layout was a standardized layout, and that's how they were able to sell them at about 50 grand. If you added on some options, perhaps 55, 60 grand, but that's the lowest I think I've seen a full length. I think there were 50 feet narrowboat being sold at. But 50, 60, you're basically getting newer boats in shinier condition with shinier paintwork, probably a few more mod cons. You might find they've got solar, you might find they've got double glazing. Double glazing, by the way, a relatively modern thing. You just don't get it on the older boats unless someone's had it refitted, but the more modern ones do have it. So 60, 70, 80 grand, you're looking at very nice boats indeed. In terms of buying new, as I say, you can get one for 50 grand to a degree. I've seen new boats also being sold at around the 80 grand mark, again typically built to a pattern, and you can just specify some options rather than having a fully custom built narrowboat, which is what many people want. If you want fully custom, you're probably looking at around 100,000-ish, and if you want to start having granite worktops and mahogany dining tables, all that stuff, well, it's the sky's the limit. 110, 120, 130, and then once you start having solar this and lithium batteries that, 150. You really can spend kind of what you want to spend on a boat. The most expensive new boat I've ever seen advertised, there was a review of it, I think in Canal Boat, and it was about 200 grand. And that, I mean, it was just super customized. It was mind-blowing. That's very much the extreme. If you want to buy new, custom built, you're probably looking between 100 and 130-ish, and above that if you just want to start spending on the extras. I'll very quickly go through some of the sort of expensive second-hand ones here. 65 grand for a 62-foot Nick Thorpe trad from 2005. Bow thruster, Vitas engine. It's got a generator built in, a travel power generator. 66 grand here for a 70-foot Steve Hudson trad. His boats are well thought of. This is from 2004, and it's got solar panels, travel pack, new batteries, engine regularly serviced, all the business on that one. 70 grand here for a 57-foot 2008 Mike Christian trad stern with 6 berths. Another 70 grand one here, 70-foot 2002 Coalcraft. Reduced to a bargain, 80 grand, is this 60-foot trad, brand new boat, it says, ready for delivery August 2016. I did say I cut these out of the paper over the last couple of months. So that's got a Barrowshire 45 horsepower, brand new, so presumably either built for a client who didn't want it or just built in the hope of selling it as a new built boat. 80 grand. Now, if you look at more unusual boats, for example, a Dutch barge, this is a 1904 proper classic. It doesn't say how wide it is, but it will be wider than a narrowboat, and you're looking at a river craft here, really. 95 grand for a 60-foot classic 1904 Dutch barge. There's 110 grand being asked here for a 2009 wide beam 50 horsepower engine, fabulous liveaboard for cruising the European waterways, they say. £164,000 on this one for a 60-foot by 12-foot cruiser wide beam built 2014 with only 14 hours on the engine. It's barely run. I think that'll do on the selection, because that gives you an idea. You can, of course, if you would like a new boat, but you really can't afford to spend all that money, you can look at a smaller boat. And there are some manufacturers who specialise in smaller boats, still built new, often to a template but with options. And you can get them relatively cheaply, all things considered. I found an ad here from the Little Boat Company, which, as the name implies, specialises in little boats from 22 foot to 32 foot. I've had a look on their website. I'll put a link to that down below, and that looks quite interesting. I meant to phone them up, actually. I'd love to go around and do a little vlog looking at them building these tiny little narrowboats. I seem to recall the website has a selection of different standard layouts, but again, I think you can ask for certain options, albeit at a cost. And then the other one who does this kind of thing is Aintree Boats, based up in Liverpool, of course, and they have a range called the Aintree Beetle, which is from 25 to 40 feet long. Prices in the ad, it says, from 30 grand to 49 grand, including the VAT. So lower cost, but new build. I follow some people on Twitter who have an Aintree Beetle. Again, I'll drop their Twitter handle down below. They love it. They go everywhere at weekends and everything. And although it's compact, they absolutely adore their little Aintree Beetle. So if you want new, but you can't afford a full-blown one, maybe look at a smaller one. Maybe not so ideal for living aboard, but if you want one for weekends and holidays, then you have an option there. The other thing that Aintree Boats do, as do many, many other builders, I'm not specifically trying to give a plug to Aintree, it's just they do a lot of advertising and they offer quite a lot of options, is they will offer you, if you want a new boat, but you cannot afford the full cost of a totally ready boat, they build the hull and then they do a certain amount of the fitting out, which can be as limited as just spraying the inside with spray foam for the insulation and putting an engine in it, or you can have that plus a bit more. They might put some of the pipe work in, some of the wiring, or you can have that plus a bit more still, where maybe they've put the bathroom and kitchen in and it's up to you to fit out the saloon and the bedroom. And these part-built boats called sailaways and sailaway plus, and they have various different titles, but generically sailaways, are for you to complete the fit out on. And because, of course, you're buying them part-made, they come in substantially cheaper. I have no experience of doing this, although it is kind of interesting. I do wonder, but I think probably I'm too incompetent to actually fit one out. But if you're interested in that option, there is a narrowboat vlog of a young couple who are doing that. That is Emma and Saxon on narrowboat Zero Gravity, and they've bought a sailaway. I can't remember who they bought it from, but they are in the middle of painting it and fitting it out and doing it all themselves. Massive learning curve for them. Now, Emma's recently been unwell. It's all been a bit serious, but she's getting better now, and they will apparently be getting back to doing their regular vlogs. In the meantime, if you haven't seen them before, go and check out the Narrowboat Zero Gravity channel. I'll leave a link to that down below. And any questions about what it's like to buy a sailaway and do it up yourself, definitely worth asking them. In terms of buying a new build boat, while I'm mentioning other vlogs, I should also give a mention to Gongoozler TV, who is doing that process of buying a brand new custom designed boat right now, funnily enough, from Aintree Boat. That decision made only a week or two ago as to who would actually produce it. And a whole series of very interesting vlogs about how the design should be and whatever. So again, I'll leave a link down below. And it's also worth a mention here for Narrowboat Helen, who, while not buying a new shell, has nonetheless bought a shell of a narrowboat and is self-fitting it out. So in many ways, it is similar to buying a sailaway. Again, I'll leave a link to that channel down below because that is all very interesting to watch. There are a couple of final things to mention just before I finish. First of all, boat shares is another way of owning a new or newish, good condition boat, but without all the expense. It's not quite like timeshare in holiday apartments, which I think still has a bit of a flaky reputation, doesn't it? But with boat share, you're not kind of renting a share of the boat. You actually own a share of the boat, and how much of a share depends on how many other people they are and how it's all divvied up. It can be a half share, a tenth share or whatever, but you chip in effectively the cost of that proportion of the boat, and it is then yours, as I understand it. You will have to also pay a monthly maintenance fee, which is fine for mooring it up and keeping it serviced and things, but it is your boat to a degree, albeit that you're sharing it with other people. But it means you get a newer boat than you might be able to afford outright. And yes, you'll have to obviously sort out a booking system with everyone else who owns it, and if you just want to pack up your stuff on a Friday evening and pop down the boat ad hoc, well, it won't be for you because it might be someone else's turn that week. But I believe boat ownership is quite popular and possibly even growing. So there are certainly several people who organise boat ownership, so I'll pop some links to those down below. Shared boat ownership, that is. And then the final thing to mention, of course, is you don't necessarily have to buy a steel narrowboat. If you just want to get out on the waterways and enjoy being out on the water, and perhaps you've got a more limited budget, you could consider a fiberglass, a GRP cruiser type boat. They tend to be shorter, they tend to be less expensive, maybe a bit old, 80s, 90s craft, but money for money, they are less than you'd pay on a narrowboat. And there are various brokers who do specialise in them, and they'll have berths, they'll have little galleys, they've got toilets, you can go cruising. They mostly are designed to be wide enough to fit through the locks, so you can do any canal cruising you like. The only thing you'll have to do is take them out of the water in winter, because if the ice freezes around your GRP craft, you do run the risk of the ice as it expands cracking your boat. So they tend to come out in winter. They're more leisure craft, summer holiday type craft. But here, for example, you've got boats at 13 grand. That's a 23-foot Viking 23 built in 1990. And there's a Viking 22 built 1994 for 16 grand. Another one of those for 15 grand. And you can pick up these GRP boats for under 10 grand. That's your under 10 grand option for something that's not a total wreck. Could be a GRP cruiser. Now, some people look down on them and sniffily refer to them as yogurt pots, but they are an alternative option. They're perfectly valid. You might see them more on the rivers perhaps, but there are certainly several around on the canals. And they will typically have an outboard motor rather than inboard, which means they're running on petrol, not diesel. You find much fewer boatyards will have petrol, but you'll have to bring a jerry can along with you at the start of the weekend, top the motor up, and off you go. That, I think, is your lucky lot for the cost of buying a narrowboat. And I hope those general price bands have given you an idea of what it costs. Above all, Look at the ads, scour the magazines, scour the canal newspapers, go and look at boats. Look at ones cheaper than what you've got, look at ones more expensive than what you've got. You never know, you might find a bargain or an owner who's willing to take a ridiculous offer, and suddenly you get the boat of your dreams for the price you didn't think was possible. But have a look anyway, because apart from anything else, it's good fun poking around boats. Hope that was useful. Any questions, drop them down below. I'll do my best to answer. Cheers now. Bye-bye.